Hello. So I'm going to introduce this video by sharing some previous information that I channeled, and then we have follow-up questions to continue that information. So I received this topic from my higher self as important. So I'm beginning a book. And so I am sharing some of the information I have channeled so far and have written down. I think I'm calling this book "All Is an Illusion But You, Your Forgotten Love." So I think that's what I'm going to call it, but it's not set in stone. Okay, so this is about the Matrix and about how the world is an illusion. Okay, so I'm not going to tell everything that I've channeled, but I do want to just sum it up so you have some context about this, and also how you can begin to apply this information. So I was channeling my higher self as well as the nine, which are the Arcturians. And so they are describing the world as the illusion. And it's an illusion because we see the world as its form, and we see it through our perceptions, but that's not really accurate. And so we are very limited and we get stuck, and we have a lot of fear because we are afraid of either things not changing, or we are afraid of change. So we are basically identifying with form is what they were talking about. So we see ourselves as like a victim. We see ourselves as identifying with certain conditions. And so we fall into a lot of fear. And so the reason that it is not reality is because we are not time, and we are the past, we are the present, and the future all at once. And so the only way to get out of fear is to believe in multiple views, is to tap in to the all. Okay, so the all is the reality. So we see only a portion, but all of it is actually happening at once. So the linear time is the illusion. So we can tap into anything, and anything is possible, and there are multiple us's, the past and the future, and it's all happening now. So we believe that certain events need to happen for other events to happen, but we actually don't. Where is that? Where it says, it's very important. It's no event causes another event. And they repeated that. Yes, no one event causes another. So we see it as, for me to go to the bathroom, I need to walk from here into the next room, which is the living room, and then down the hall, and then into the bedroom, and then into the bathroom. But we really don't need to do it like that linear. So that is how the other dimensions get trippy, is that you could be in multiple places at once, and you could basically hop from one room to the next, and you don't need that linear time frame. Okay, So, all right. So what they then talked about is moving into the present is really the only way towards freedom. So it talked about us being our own prison. So mostly the mind, but also the body, and just using our senses, and just using our senses and our perception with the body to tell us what is accurate and what is true. And they talked about evolution. And what if we don't need stages or levels to evolve? Why do we have this belief that evolution is like, if we're here, we need the next step on the ladder? And they said there is no ladder. The ladder doesn't exist. And we can access any piece now within us. We do not need to shape our reality. We are the reality. Okay, so basically they're saying that anything can happen, and we use memory. They were also talking about memory, and we use memory as our reference point. But what a memory isn't always accurate. Even from a scientific view, they talk about memory not being reliable. And we learn a lot from history and from what other people wrote down, what other people said, and not based off our own experiences. And we, use memory to shape our beliefs. So if I remember that I bought a car yesterday, and then I go out to my driveway expecting to see that car, then there's a car. But what tells us that we actually bought that car? So the present is the only truth. And we can tap into our own power if we're in the present and know that we could change the past. We could change our memory by just believing that that didn't happen, which leads to this story that we're going to. Both Adrian and I have a story to show how this goes into practice and how you can apply this. But then they left off with changes can be made to the past, and how the way to change reality is simple. We have to remove and alter perception of time and space. And that's where they left off. All right. So I would have been really thinking about this and really trying to figure out how to apply this information. And if this didn't make a whole lot of sense, the book is going to make more sense. I was trying to speed through this. But the other day, I thought that I lost my really powerful, really expensive stones. So this is a tektite. I have a prophecy stone, and I have Libyan desert glass and Columbiite, I think that's what it's called, and sapphire night or something like that. Okay, so I bought these really expensive stones, and I couldn't find them. And I've been trying to work on attachment. So I've been getting rid of things that I don't need, even things that I do like a little bit. My higher self is kind of calling me to just not hold on to everything. And so I was getting rid of some boxes. And so, okay, I thought that I threw the stones away. I was certain that I threw these stones away, actually. And so I went on and I even bought some new stones. And there's a whole story I could tell you about how this is actually a lesson to me and also about money. However, I will keep this focused. And I thought that I threw them away. Well, I remember this material. And so I remembered how memory shapes our reality. Well, what if I just decide that I didn't throw it away? What if I decide that I hadn't thrown it away and I will find this? So I started to believe really strongly, I will find these stones. I will find these stones. I did not throw it away. And I found the stones. I put them in another box and I stumbled across it just when I was going around the house. So I didn't throw them away. So it begs the question, right? Did I shape my reality? Did I change reality and change what happened? Right? And then Adriana, you have a story about the tea.
Well, it's not as powerful as that, but okay, so we were eating lunch just a little bit ago, and I had tea water on, and Heather went and made tea, and I was just eating and waiting. So she had last touched the tea kettle. I went out to the kitchen to get my tea. I looked over at the oven, and it has a light come on when we turn the stove, like when the stove is hot. So I look at it. At least my memory said I just looked at it. And then I went and I put my dirty bowl in the sink. I go above, I get the tea. So I'm not looking at the stove. Then I look directly over next to the stove and I'm getting out my mug. And I'm still not looking at the stove. I put my mug down. I reach over to get the tea kettle and I see that the light is off. So the stove was off. And I maybe turned it off and didn't remember that I did it, but it also maybe just turned off, or changed while I was doing that. But what's funny is my immediate reaction was, or it was off the entire time and I was seeing things with the light because I didn't even trust that it had been on in the first place. So I asked Heather if she had turned the oven off or the stove off, and she couldn't even remember if she had turned it off or not either. So I don't even know what really happened, but either way, it was just a interesting little thing that happened.
Yeah. I have noticed that my memory has not been as reliable anymore.
Oh, but actually, when I was doing it, I was thinking right when I was putting my mug down, okay, now I'm going to turn the stove off. So like, did I somehow turn it off before I physically turned it off? Because I've also heard with like our reflexes, right? We begin to move our body before we actually tell our body to do something. So I don't know, that just makes me think of that. It's almost like I did an action, or like I had the response of the action before I made the action.
Yes. Like, yeah. And I think that's happened to me before too, but I can't think of a really great example. But this goes into practice such as everybody, I think, has had that where you look somewhere and you couldn't find a thing, and then you look in the same place and then you find the thing. So I, for instance, lost a key once, and then I kept looking in the same spot over and over and over. And I was like, I think I was here. I'm pretty sure I left it here. And then I look in that spot. I had looked like multiple times, at least 3 times. And then there it was. So I think what they are trying to tell us is that this is why the world is an illusion, because it can shift, it can change. But then Isn't everything an illusion? I don't know.
But maybe that, like, my story was really going off yours because it didn't hit me until I was, here telling it. But where you're saying one action doesn't have to lead to the other. It's like I can turn off the stove without having to physically turn off the stove. And it's like, is that what it was happening? It's like I have the thought of I'm gonna turn the stove off, and I turned the stove off without physically turning the stove off.
Yeah. And that's what they're saying, like, no, because if no event causes another event. So you didn't have to turn it off for it to be turned off.
With the stones, it's like you can throw the stones away, but that doesn't mean you have to lose the stones. Like, they don't have to disappear just because you threw them away.
True. And you could also maybe get rid of something without actually getting rid of something. So we can shape reality. And so now we have some follow-up questions about going deeper into this, but really my takeaway is that consciousness and awareness is real because it creates everything. And that's the only thing that remains. And we could tap into consciousness and awareness. Any consciousness or awareness form only changes. I don't know. Does that make sense? I hope. I'm always concerned if I actually make sense. If you have any questions, leave them below. But now we will channel some follow-up questions over this. And if you have any great questions, then too, please add those. So I shielded, and now I have my prophecy stone, which is really great for channeling, by the way. And my tech die. All right, I'm bringing the 9. Yes, we are ready to proceed.
Thank you for coming in. What is real? I understand it to be consciousness and awareness of anything experienced in the present. What makes this real, and how can we differentiate truth from illusion?
Yes. We would like to describe reality as the forms and shapes which you understand. You experience these shapes and forms within yourself, for you understand the truth behind anything that you interact with. However, this is not the actual reality in which you present yourself with. This is why we classify it as illusion, is that we do not understand the shapes and forms in which you understand. We see them as a simulation. We see the things that you interact with as shapes and forms, but we cannot interact with the shapes and forms. And that is why we see it as an illusion. For everything outside, when you get into higher dimensions, is not solid. We do not understand forms in the same way. We see it more as a hologram. We see it more as a representation and not the actual simulation itself. We do not see the form as a part of us. You see it as a part of you. You see that as you instead of you creating that. So the only way out of this system is for you to realize that you are not a part of anything you see. So if you see that you have brown hair, you are not someone who has brown hair. You are not someone with blue eyes. You are none of these things. And Heather says, well, I'm all these things, but no, you're not. You're not any of these things. She understands that too after she's said it in her mind. See, these are ideas that are placed upon you based off your reality. But this history that you have been placed upon isn't real either. It's all an illusion. You do not understand that you haven't experienced anything but the present. This is a very tricky thing to explain. However, you do not even know whether your memory is accurate. You do not know if you had a certain lifetime. You do not know if you did what you did yesterday that you remember. These things are placed upon you only within your mind, only within the body. Even anything outside yourself, you are not even sure whether that is your reality, because it's based off your perception of what's happening in your body. And Heather's questioning, how do you know the body is real? Correct. What do you actually know is real? What do you actually know? Being is the only thing that you actually know is real. Being is the only truth, because everything else is an illusion. Everything else changes. You can be with anything, and that's the only thing that stays constant. And so, how do you know if anything is real? You believe these things only because you experience them. But experience might not be real. So it's more of the consciousness. It's more of the beliefs that you hold. You believe that these things are real, but belief happens within. Yes, it's a very, very deep conversation, and it's very complex. For this leads into many other questions that you will have, but they're all in the mind. Everything that goes on is in the mind. And beliefs are what shapes your reality, not the reality itself. We are questioning how we can explain this further, but we want to make sure that this is clear. What else would you have as questions based off this answer?
Well, you said experience may not be real, and I understand that, but is that specific to us here, like in this matrix, because of the way that works? Or are you saying that even beyond that, experience may not be real because it's all in the mind?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
We would like to say that anything experienced is not real. But the thing is that once you escape the matrix, you escape this 3D mind reality that you believe is real. You understand that it's not real. And that's the key. You understand that it's only a representation of your consciousness. We understand that. And there's no separation then. You have a separation. See, this is another way of describing it. You have a separation between form and reality. So you believe that what you interact with is the truth. You have a table, so it's real. You can feel the table, so that is truth. But everything is interpreted in the mind, right? So where does your mind go? Your mind will have a statement about the table. And that statement tells you something about the table. Now, the thing is, that statement could actually change the table. But since you have a statement that says, oh, the table is black, it remains black. So mostly this table is black, but it could be blue or red or green, magenta. You can make the table disappear. You can make it get bigger, smaller, change it. But nothing that you see is actually a part of you. So this is the tricky part. Heather is asking, but if I change the table, doesn't the table then mean that I'm an extension of the table? And this is a very, one way of thinking of it, yes, but the table isn't even there. The table is something that you feel. And we're convoluted.
Isn't there still an energy that represents the table? So even if the table wasn't there, that energy would still be there, though?
The table is you. The energy is within you. There is no energy outside of you. There is no energy outside space and time. There is no space and time. All of it is something that you can tap into here and now. You could tap into the future. You could tap into the past. We want you to understand that time is nothing more than something you have experienced. And experience is something you can tap into in the present, in your current state. If you believe that there was a previous state, it is something that yes, okay. There's a lot here. The past previous states were not trying to, okay. The past is real, but you do not need to believe it's real. Okay. There was a certain experience, but what if you change your experience? What if you went to the movies yesterday and you agreed that you went to the movies? Okay. How does that affect you in the present? How do you know that you went to the movies? You believe that you went to the movies. You can feel like you went to the movies, but how does that shape you now? Well, what if you want to have not gone to the movies or you wanted to see a different movie? Then you can believe that you went to a different movie. Now, even if that doesn't change what movie you actually saw yesterday, it changes your present because you will feel different. You will think differently, and it will shape different occurrences in your life. So regardless of what movie you saw yesterday, it doesn't really matter. You have a chance to believe whatever you want to believe. And that's reality. We could go further. We do not want to take up too much of your time, but how much of that does make sense?
That makes sense. We did a previous channeling that was about like the parallel universes and how we don't really have parallel universes, but we can change things. And this made a bit more sense with that to me, because it's like it's kind of like we have the branches off, but it like comes off. So it still happened, but then it's not shaping this reality, so it's kind of separated off. So then it's not like we have a whole nother parallel universe where we only saw the movie that we actually saw.
One way of seeing this, yes. One way to think of this, and Heather was viewing it like there's all this energy and you just need to grab it. Whatever energy you call to you. So you are actually taking the past energy out there and bringing it to you into the present. And so it's up to you to grab whatever shapes and forms you want to. So there's multiple realities and you can bring it to you. There's only one.
Mm-hmm.
So there are not multiple you. There's not multiple Heathers. You are the only one experiencing yourself, but you are the only one calling that which you need now. So
there are different versions of you, but all of those versions of you are still you. And in the present moment, there's only the you.
It's potential energy. So let's say that you had a lifetime in Egypt. You believe you had a lifetime in Egypt. And you went to that and you experienced that. But let's say that you went back and you reshaped the Egypt lifetime so that you didn't die at that time, but you lived on. Well, now you have that energy of you living on. So that means you lived on because that is now your experience. The other lifetime used to be your experience, but now it's not. So did it really happen? We don't know, actually, do we? But we believe that that's what's true. That's one way of thinking of it.
And I do have another question that I had a while ago. But if we see the table, and you're saying we see the table black because we tell ourselves the table is black before we see the table. But how does that work when we have these memories that are faulty? Like, for example, if for some reason, it probably wouldn't happen here because it's our table, but if this was my friend's table and I've seen the table before, but I tell myself they have a black table and I go to their house and some like it's brown and I'm like, I really thought that table was black. Why do you see it as brown then if your preconception before you saw it was different?
We shall get into this. This is a illusion based off a sum total of the experiences of the collective. This is more complicated, and we shall get into that. What tells you that that table is black?
Your eyes.
Yes. And if your eyes are part of the body, you cannot really believe that it's accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to your neighbor's house and you see the black table, you might believe that it's black. But what if it was brown? Correct. What if you went to the house and it was suddenly brown? If you believed it was black, now it's brown. It is not based on your perception. It is based off your neighbor's perception. So there is a collective agreement that is placed upon you. And this is more complex, but there is a belief in the collective. Yet again, we say belief. You've all agreed upon and believed together that you have a belief in the world. You shape the world more together than you know. So the shapes and forms do shift and change based upon your beliefs, but also the beliefs of the sum total beliefs.
But if it's not coming up in, say, conversation, why isn't it that you could still see the table as black where your friend is seeing it as brown? Because then that would be answering for both and it wouldn't cause any disagreement. I would think it would only matter if it became something that actually got like discussed or became.
Yes. Oh, very good. We are pleased with this question. We have a certain agreement. This agreement is based upon you, not us. But you have agreed upon certain things, such as meeting certain agreements, such as we need to agree upon that table. You set your own rules, and believing in those rules make the rules real. You cannot get out of the rules until you understand the rules. Yes, Heather is understanding. She listened to a podcast earlier that was talking about darkness and evil and about how there's control in the world, right? That maybe set the rules. Now, she also understands that evil and darkness is not real. She understands this. She understands that nobody is actually dark and there isn't dark and light. There is not a separation of dualism like that. However, she understood that she needs to know that there is darkness and control for her to escape the darkness and control and to know that there is no dark and light. But you must understand dark and light to understand that there is not dark and light. And she understood that. So for you to understand that there are rules, then you can escape and free yourself from the rules. But you must know that there are rules that are placing you in limitation. Only when you understand the limitation can then you step outside of it. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm. So unconsciously, we tell ourselves, well, sometimes consciously, but that we will see the world the way that other people see the world, because then we have a harmony with them. So when we go over to see our friends,
you have agreed upon a consciousness
that
keeps you limited in your forms, but not just your forms, your consciousness. The reality that you tap into is based upon the reality of yourself. Mm-hmm. You remain fixed within your own self. You see? Mm-hmm. So once you understand these concepts, you can actually change the table. Well, my neighbor believes that it's brown. I believe that it's black. I'm going to change it to black. Then you can. Mm-hmm. But not until you understand why it is brown.
Right. So it's it can be a much bigger, larger issue of us just even believing that this is an apartment that we're in and this looks like that. So it can definitely, I can see how those rules apply to many things that are larger than just the color that you see a table. Mm-hmm. But when you go to your friends, you go in saying, I will see the table the way that my friend sees the table, even though that would be an unconscious agreement.
Yes. And so this is why we call it an illusion, is because we believe in multiple truths. When you get outside this matrix system, you will understand that there's multiple realities. And this is why Heather's remembering, Akasha Azrite was saying that she was believing and creating her own universe, and everyone has that capability of creating their own universe. Mm-hmm. And this is true and accurate. And this is why we are all birthing the new reality. We are all birthing the new earth. And when we understand this, we can understand that there's multiple earths that we can tap into. Mm-hmm.
But you have to understand that first, because otherwise then you really would think that you're going crazy or something like that. So you have to understand the framework that everyone else is in order to be outside the framework.
Right, exactly. Yes. And Heather is thinking and questioning what is real in the system as psychosis. what is really crazy. And so the craziness is actually when the mind goes crazy. And the mind believes certain things. But if you are escaping the mind, that is not psychosis, even though you are not believing in the base reality and you are not seeing the reality that others see. This makes sense, correct? So the crazy, if people use the label, we would say is when your mind is showing you pictures, when your mind is hearing things, but when you are escaping the mind, then you're only expanding yourself, expanding consciousness. If you really think about this, if you were to believe in psychosis, we're psychotic every day. In that we are either in the mind or we are not in the mind. So, yes, it's nothing. The only real thing that people are agreeing upon as sane is the reality that you are collectively agreed upon. But now we're escaping that. So you are all losing your mind.
Right. So people speak of the 3D being a matrix, but wouldn't all dimensions have a matrix, as there is some form of limitation placed upon it?
Mm-hmm. So we have already answered that to a certain extent, in that we understand that nothing we see is real. Nothing that we see is the truth. There is not one truth. There's multiple truths. And it does not define us. We can have multiple truths at the same time. So you might see the table as black, I see it as blue, and it can be both. So we do have a matrix in that when we are a part of a group mindset, we do have limitations placed upon us. We do have limitations. This is true. One way to think of it would be when you're in the sixth dimension, you can define space-time, but yes, there are no pictures to govern this. Okay. We have to explain this a different way. When you get into another reality, when you can tap into different forms, different beliefs, different consciousness, the field shifts. But there is a field. There is a field. And so we would define that as a matrix system. And then after you understand the field, then you can understand how to escape the field and then move on. But you can always move on. There is not an evolutionary process in which you have to get stuck to. You could jump. So you could, theoretically, move from the fifth dimension to the eighth dimension, just like that. But you would have to tap into that to know that it's possible and to harness that ability.
You said that we could tap into anything at once. So how can we tap into the higher dimensions? I'm guessing you're speaking of higher versions of ourselves.
Yes. So first off, you must understand that you can, and then you believe that you can, and then you call it in. So I asked for my higher self. You feel the higher self. You understand the energy behind the higher self. You withhold information because you see yourself as information. You do not need to believe these things. You just need to know that you are these things. So understand that there are multiple realities. Understand that there is no separation. You are. So if you are, anything is possible. So just ask. Just ask for yourself and call it in. Just an openness of receiving. All is possible. We understand that there are blocks, there are barriers, and there are certain things that might hold you back. And this can get convoluted. However, we would say that the simplest thing would be to call it in, know that you can. And as you do, you'll break free from any barriers. You'll begin to understand the barriers. And once you understand the barriers, then you can free yourself from the barriers. And Heather is understanding that barriers need to be understood before you can transcend them. You must know that there is a barrier for you to overcome a barrier. Because otherwise, you do not see the shapes and forms that are in place. Yeah, you do not see the thought forms that you have created. You must know that they are created for you then to decreate them, to transmute them.
The past is now, as there is no time. How can we best heal or overcome unhelpful beliefs or even trauma that occurred to a past self or us in a memory?
Understand the memory. Understand the memory. Understand the block, the barrier that we are referring to. So the trauma, the illusion there, and then you can transmute it. You can transcend it by choosing a different reality. Okay, that person suffered, that person fell down a hole. Let's just say that person fell down a well and they died. Okay, well, I'm choosing now. I felt that, I know that, I understand that. I choose now that this person was saved. I choose now that this person got out of the well, climbed out of the well, and then they moved on. Well, I choose that and I change that. And so then I become that. I am that which has escaped the well. And then your reality now will reflect that. It will change. You will see changes because before your consciousness was understanding yourself as falling down the well. And now you understand yourself as free from the well. And you can do this for everything. You can do this from things that happened yesterday or things that happened 10 minutes ago. Man, I spilled the cider. Okay. Well, change it. You didn't spill the cider. You chose that you never spilled the cider. And then you will reflect that. Try it out. It'll be amazing.
You just reflect on that, or you have to actually believe it strongly enough that, for example, you say spill the cider, that the cider would be in the fridge again because you didn't spill it.
Yes. We say this is amazing because it will actually shift your reality. You will see things that you never thought would be. It's very trippy. You will understand that you never spilled the cider. This can get very trippy. You will go to the fridge and you will see the cider in the fridge and you'll be like, what? I spilled that. It will be amazing. Now, I won't say that this will happen every time, but it will happen. It'll be very crazy and amazing. And so
it isn't important that we force that, but it would just happen.
Right. No, you don't want to force it. You don't want to fall into fear. This isn't about fear, right?
Mhm.
Fear would be it's very control. I must make it in the fridge. It doesn't matter if it's in the fridge or not. That's the key. Doesn't matter if it's in the fridge or not. But I am the one who never spilled the cider. It doesn't matter whether I spilled it or not. I am not a reflection of someone who did that. So you can call this forth. You can picture it in your mind. You just want to feel it. You want to believe it. You want to think it. You just start reflecting and redirecting yourself, replacing yourself as the person who never spilled it. You don't need to dwell over how you spilled it because you never did. It's sort of like yesterday, the other day, when Heather believed that she threw out the crystals. She was thinking, oh my gosh, how could I do such a thing? Well, then she caught herself and said, what if I never did? What if I'm not that person who throws things away and is negligent? I am not that person. I choose not to be that person. I love myself to say that I never threw it away. And that's the key. You don't have, people talk a lot about visualization and you can visualize, but it doesn't have to be, it's an energy. It's really just an energy. It's just frequency. I'm calling in the frequency of someone who never did that thing or who did that thing. I'm the one who really did give cider away to my neighbor. I'm sorry I didn't. So I did give my cider away to my neighbor. I am now a generous person. Yes. Just call it in. It's nothing more than energy. You can use the body. You can use the body with thoughts and the shapes and the forms and the visualization and the feelings. You could even act it out. You could go give the cider to your neighbor actually now. But it's really just the energy that you want to work with. That's the actual feeling that you need. Working with the heart center. That's really what's going to serve you.
Do we really have fragments, parts of us that conflict with ourselves now?
That is a very complicated topic. You have many fragmentations based off the illusions that you hold, and then you have conflictions because you had someone who said, I spilled the cider, and then you had someone who said that I never did, and you believe both. That's the trouble. That's where fragments come in. So you need to believe in one. You need to understand the other part of you that believes one way and convince it to believe the other way. So I see the part that is really sad that I spilt the cider. I'm really sad over that. And I need to teach it that it's not a big deal. Okay, part that believes that you are not worthy because you spilled it and you're always a klutz. All right. Well, I don't believe that we're a klutz. We are good enough, and we know that we never spilled it. We never spilled it because we are good enough. We love ourselves enough that it doesn't even matter if we spilled it. So part of me, I understand you, I know you, I validate you, but we're not going to stay there. We don't need to stay there in the criticism and low self-worth of spilling it. So I love you. And energetically, you will shift. It's all about the energy.
So really the fragmented part is the part of us that's trying to tell us something different from what it is that we're trying to choose.
I think that you understand. Yes. It's the part of you that doesn't believe in yourself. It's the part of you that doesn't understand yourself as love. It's a part of you that doesn't love yourself. So you just need to love yourself. To understand yourself as unloving, to love yourself. So you must always understand the limitation that you place upon yourself and then go beyond the limitation. Then you can overcome limitations. Heather defines it as transmutation. We like that. You could call it alchemy as well.
How can we differentiate true organic decisions versus those of the matrix or ego?
Follow your heart. Heather pauses because she knows that that has been difficult for her, because then she has conflict. Yes. If you were to still yourself and to see yourself, you would understand what to do in every moment. You would choose the most accurate form for yourself. You believe in yourself, but you don't. You go based off your memories, you go based off your mind and your thoughts. One way to do this, though, is to still yourself, see yourself, know yourself, and then just choose what to do based off that. Who am I in this moment? What do I choose to be in this moment? That is it. Work with love. What would love do? How do I feel love in this moment? It's that simple. Forgiveness goes into this as well. Forgive yourself. You do not need to prove yourself. You say that you did things wrong, so you must make up for it. And this goes into karma. You do not. We are escaping karma. Know yourself now, and that's what really matters.
You said that we can change reality by removing or altering perception. Help us understand this when there is a collective agreement. I feel like you already answered that.
Right, we did. There is a collective agreement. There's a lot of information we could go into about this, but most of you understand that there are certain agendas on the planet who have hijacked the collective agreement and gotten in trouble for it. But there are rules that they have placed upon you, and there's a system in place, and you believe in the system. So you are escaping the system and taking your power back to understand that there are no limitations, and you can tap into your own power and tap into anything. And you can bring any information down in we don't like the word down, to you and become you. Move through you. We like this. So Escape your reality to know that your reality is not truth. It is but one form. Go into the formless, and then you can choose the form. So anything that you see, if you don't agree upon it, then just choose a different. So let's say that something broke, but just choose that it's not broken. Embody that feeling that it wasn't broken. Know that it wasn't broken. See that it wasn't broken. Choose that it wasn't broken. And see what happens. It may form into a different form in which it was never broken. You might get a replacement. You might stumble upon a better one or something. But anyways, it will be healed. And what matters is what happens internally. So to escape the matrix, escape your conditioning, escape the collective, choose your own reality. Yes, we will say this. Choose your own reality.
So I didn't realize that there was more to that question. I thought there was another one. And so you already said this was this, we deny the agreed upon world. But then Heather also had, what about its structure and rules? So what are the structure and rules that go into what we can change it into?
Anything. So you have an agreed upon reality that there are things like gravity. Forms take shape because of what you were told. You were told Isaac Newton had a apple fall down and believed in gravity. So there's gravity, correct?
Mm-hmm.
This is a story that you have. So there's a reality based on gravity. So there's many rules. There's so many rules. There's rules about when to cross the street, but you don't need to believe in the rules. So yes, there's consequences if you cross the street when you're not supposed to. So you don't want to do that. But let's say that you want to cross the street. It's not time yet. You could believe, hey, I will not be late. I do not need to cross the street. Things are going to work out for me. That's how you can work with the system. If I want to fly, I will believe I can fly. Maybe you will fly in your dreams. Maybe you will fly in the next dimension. But it can happen. Other people may not see you fly because their reality is not based on your reality. See?
But how does that work? Because shouldn't there are rules with the other people? Because it goes into to what I was going to ask of, for example, you were talking about a person falling in a hole, which I assume you meant like in a previous incarnation. But say you know someone and they are suffering, and that is causing you suffering. So if you go in and want to say that they don't have that suffering,
okay, this is getting into
with their free will.
Okay, this is getting into completely other topics that we would like to continue with, but we think that we should end today. But this is a very good next chapter for this book because it gets very there's a lot more, because that goes into free will, and that goes into what is in your conscious agreement, what isn't, what is, yes. Heather is quite, yes, Heather understands, right? about control and what you would actually call the dark. But yes, who have taken away your freedom, right?
Mhm.
So do you want to take away someone else's freedom? This is very complex, but we shall get into that topic next time. That is a very, very good question. Heather does have questions about that because she has asked herself, what if my suffering is dependent on the suffering of someone else? Yes, this is very...
And like the flying, because that was also going with it, is like, could you not fly then, or would people just not see you fly? But you don't have to answer that if that would be one.
Well, we shall just say that things get changed. So Heather remembers watching The Secret. This was a long time ago. The Secret, one thing it did say was, if you attracted a certain thing, okay, so let's say that your neighbor gave you headaches, right? Every time you saw them, they gave you just bad vibes, and it was always really bad when you saw them, okay? But then you started to attract, wow, whenever I go in my apartment building, it's going to be just amazing and peaceful and calm, okay? So you don't want to take away somebody else's freedoms. You're not going to say, oh, my neighbor's not going to be there, but you're calling in the peacefulness, okay? Now, when you go into that apartment building, the neighbor probably isn't there, okay? But you didn't say that the neighbor had to not be there, okay? That's where freedom comes in, because the neighbor could have shifted. The neighbor could have shifted and changed and become a better person, and then it's all calm and peaceful, and maybe they just don't talk to you anymore, okay? But most likely you go in and the neighbor's not there. So because their reality is not yours, their reality is chaotic and drama. Maybe. Do you see? But you have shaped your own reality. So others will, it's kind of like a machine that works together, but you are in the one part of the machine working with things that are in agreement with you. Does that make sense? Yes. What else? Tiffany.
That's it then.
Okay. Thank you. We are happy to be called upon. This is fun for us. Thank you. Okay, they're leaving me with believe in truth. Okay. All right. Any last thoughts?
No.
Or maybe just recognitions, because you're not supposed to think. All right. Yeah, I feel a little spacey now.
I guess just I keep thinking that I'm not drinking enough water, and I should just tell myself I've drank enough water. I've drank enough water instead.
Right. And drink enough water now. Because you would, because you would want to choose an action based off that too.
Yes, but I was like, oh, I have a headache. It's because I haven't drank enough water. You know what I mean? And then I'd be like, well, even if I drink this water, I'm gonna have a headache because I haven't drank enough water. Tell yourself you drank enough water.
Yeah, you drink enough water, you don't have a headache. I believe I don't have the headache. I actually did that the other day. Yeah, I could get into that, but I laid down and I held my Andaras that I have, and I was like, my headache is gone. But so I took an action there though, because I closed my eyes and everything. So there is, and that's another topic to get into, like, do you need the actions then to reflect that too? But not necessarily.
It's more like the action reinforces it.
Probably happen. It probably works with the mind and
Mhm.
works with the consciousness to overcome those blocks too. If you actually take the action too. I don't know. That's another topic to get into because I'm reading this book and it talked about taking action because action makes things quicker. Because if you don't take the action, it's slower to see your results of like manifesting. But that's probably just based off our beliefs. It's all about beliefs and it's all about energy.
Because it's you saying, well, I'm doing this, so then it's gonna work. Whereas if you don't, then it's like
that's like
floaty. It's a floaty idea.
That's like spells because you don't need to do the spell ritual, but that can make it go quicker. That's just my belief, anyways. Beliefs, right? But if you do take some kind of action like lighting the candle when you say the prayer, right? Then to me that adds to the energy. But I think it has to do with the energy.
Your intention because you're saying I have enough intention to do this that I am doing this, and this is like I have my intention, but then the candle also has my intention, so I'm increasing the intention through that. But then also because you believe that the spell will do that by doing the spell, then you're telling yourself that it'll be quicker, so then it's quicker.
Gosh, we could just keep going on because then I'm thinking about crystals. We don't need crystals to tap into the energy. Not really. So I've actually been there where honestly I don't have a crystal, but I want my crystal. I'm like, man, I wish I had that crystal with me. I will imagine that crystal in my hand and I will begin to feel the energy. So we don't actually need things. Oh my gosh. And then I'm going to do this video on Andaras because Andaras aren't actually physical. They're a hologram. Anyways, that's really cool too. But everything's kind of holographic, which is another total. But anyways, if you believe that you're not limited, you won't be limited. So honestly, I guess if I really threw these away, I could have like tapped into their power even if I didn't have them. Okay, we're going to leave you with that. Thanks for watching. And we will have another part, I guess, coming up with this. We will follow up with more.